Так, доброго дня всім присутнім. Я думаю, вже всі, хто хотів, доєднались, і ми будемо розпочинати наш вебінар. Як завжди, кілька слів від мене. Мене звати Ярослава, я представник платформи Prosvita. І я вам хочу розказати трошки про нашу платформу. Це безкоштовна освітня онлайн-платформа, яка розроблена групою небайдужих до освітніх процесів людей. Ми до нашої платформи підключаємо різні навчальні заклади. В нас вже по всій Україні є дуже багато задоволених користувачів, які користуються нашою платформою кожного дня. На нашій платформі містяться електронні щоденники, журнали. В нас також ви можете проводити відеочати, користуватися онлайн-бібліотекою. В нас щодня поповнюються курси підвищення кваліфікації, тобто ви можете їх проходити і отримувати сертифікат. Ми також постійно проводимо різні івенти, вебінари, і це ми все викладаємо на наших ресурсах. Взагалі наша платформа залучає всіх учасників освітнього процесу. Це і керівників шкіл, і учнів, і батьків. Для учнів у нас розроблена гейміфікація, і функціонал є досить широким для них. І сьогодні ми вирішили поговорити про таку важливу тему, як урок англійської мови, а саме наш експерт Куценко Ігор поділиться з вами своїм досвідом та навичками з приводу вчителювання англійської мови, як правильно проводити цей урок. Тому, Ігор, прошу вас до слова.
All right. Dear colleagues, language educators, English teachers, ну і також усі, кому цікаве вивчення та викладання англійської мови. Давайте розпочинати. Темою сьогоднішнього нашого вебінару я обрав таку, як креативність. Креативні підходи до викладання англійської мови в сучасному світі, в час сьогодення, в час нової української школи. Ті задачі і ті складнощі, які стоять перед нами, спробуємо сьогодні з ними розібратися. Більшість частину вебінару я спробую з вами спілкуватися англійською мовою для підвищення вашої фахової, ваших фахових знань, а також буду десь включати в російську чи то українську мову, краще навіть українську, тому що все ж таки для більш детальних пояснень. Про що ми сьогодні поговоримо, перш за все? Давайте поговоримо про creative approach to ESL teaching and my personal experience.
Ігор, переб'ю вас. Ви вже запустили презентацію чи ні? Тому що в нас...
Без презентації поки що. Зараз ми вже... Давайте на екранчик запустимо.
Добре.
Так, на екранчик запускаємо презентацію. Так, нехай вона у нас також. Так. Окей. So, we'll speak about creative approach to in ESL teaching. We'll speak about my personal experience, lesson planning, examples of activities for creative ESL lessons, developing interactive, fun and engaging environment in the classroom. And I hope you will gain much out of this from this webinar today. As far as you know, there is a worldwide movement which is currently happening in the world of ESL education. Our learners, they have grown more sophisticated, and the traditional methods of teaching do not seem to work actually, and like they used to in the past. Language educators and English teachers, they are starting to grow tired of the several factors. We lack of motivation. We lack of innovation. We are not satisfied with the constructive school system. Lack of good materials, lack of good textbooks, and as a matter of fact, constantly searching. We always search for different new methods, new approaches to teaching, but there has to be a more effective way to teach ESL. I wouldn't deny that there is a creative approach, and there are many creative approaches to ESL teaching, which I actually use in my career, in my experience, and in my classroom. And there are several ways and methods which can be handy, which can be useful for every ESL educator, for every English teacher. And even not only for English teachers, but as well as for teachers of the French language or the Spanish language, or maybe even of the Chinese language, I don't know. Actually, today we'll try to present some practical tips for all the ESL educators who want to develop their educational skills, who want to add much more creativity into their learning and teaching processes. And there is one really difficult question. The question is how to create an atmosphere for learners that is learner-centric, that is interactive, fun, engaging, and most importantly, it should be something really effective. And if we do this, we are able to realize that creative methods and approaches, they can help us, they can help our learners learn best, and we can deliver amazing results. Well, to start with, let me introduce probably myself, and my name is Igor Kutsenko. I am an ESL teacher at the secondary state school number 11, that's Pavlograd. Pavlograd is not such a big city, it's a town, it's in Dnipro region. I work for just not so big school, it's not a big really school, but we've got many English-speaking classes. Besides, there is another second language, and that's French. At the same time, I'm a headmaster of the private establishment. I work for the private establishment called Розвиває in class. Actually, I'm here now, and I'm having this webinar while my students are absent. I'm not having a class today. And I've been teaching for 12 years now. I'll be really glad to share my experience with you, and I hope this webinar will be practical and useful for everyone. You will find a great source of information, and there will be some motivation for you to create something new, to have creative approaches in your ESL teaching, and you need to be sure that we don't stand still. We always move, we always develop, and the development actually is the best when you want this, when you've got the desire for this. So my personal story, which has had lots of drawbacks, lots of positive, negative experiences, but as you know, we come through different stages in life and career. And when we want to get something out of this life, we get it. I still remember my first ESL classes, which I will probably never forget, because my first several months of teaching English were a real disaster. They were a real disaster. You can't believe it, but it's true. I graduated from the university, and I started to work within a week or so, just after the graduation. And I had no idea what I was doing. A blank sheet of paper had to become 45 minutes of constructive ESL teaching. I think you understand what I mean. When you need to come to the class, when you need to greet the students or the pupils, when you need to present the topic, when you need to organize the atmosphere, when you need to create, to develop every personality, it's rather difficult. And you know that to be creative is rather difficult. I'm sure that you can say, I'm not a creative person. I'm just an ordinary teacher who's got a textbook, who's got a lessons plan, and who's got a whiteboard or just a blackboard. And I teach English because it's my profession, it's my job. Actually, you are not right. You are mistaken. After a lot of trial and error, I finally figure out maybe a simple, but still it's a recipe. It's a recipe how to create an English lesson plan that works. Now I'll be glad to pass my lessons learned to you, and I'm really glad to do this, to have such an opportunity and such a chance. So, what is a creative teaching? Today we'll try to answer this question, and I hope you'll understand and you'll make some conclusions, you'll make some understanding, a proper understanding what it means, how to develop creativity, how to deal with it, how to involve and engage all your students. It doesn't matter you work in a primary school or you work in just with middle stage students, or just or maybe at a higher level, or maybe you even work with some adults. There should be a simple recipe to create an ESL lesson plan, or plans, many plans that work. Well, to begin with, we should notice and we should understand that creative approach to teaching, it's some kind of a combination of two components. There are only two components: personal creative potential of your students and your teacher's creativity. If you are a creative teacher, it's easier for you to develop such, to come with such an experience with creative approach in teaching. But I know that many teachers, they simply ask themselves how to be creative, how to be imaginative, how to develop such cool lessons, how to give or conduct such cool lessons, how to motivate students, because you know that nowadays our children, our school children, they simply don't want to go to school. They don't want to gain knowledge. They don't want to be motivated. That's why we should understand firstly the characteristic features of creativity. So, in my opinion, creativity, it's not about novelty and innovation, fun activities, or just fun worksheets. It's not about search and motivation. And at the same time, it's not about emotions. You can see this slide, you can see this circle, and actually four components for creativity are mentioned, but still, creativity comes with imagination, originality. There should be much non-template work. There should be, or even must, it's a must be ability to fantasize. It should be some initiative, high self-organization, just teachers' high self-organization, work capacity, and of course, fun and engaging work. If you've got these all components and you put them inside of your classroom, I'm sure that your lessons will be really creative. Your students will be involved, they will be engaged, they will be motivated, and of course you'll get much out of that. We should remember that every child is unique. We should bear in mind that children have got their interests, their desires, their passions, natural skills. And of course, we must improve their creativity, improve their creative potential. It's very important. So being creative is not easy, but it's important. It's important, and we should try to do it. We should learn how to do it. You always need to pay attention to many factors, various distractors you may have in your classroom, and at the same time we need to be sure that our lessons are fun. They involve all the participants, not only several desks, just you've got 20 students in your class, but 5 are involved, and the rest just are sitting and doing nothing, telling you that they are not interested in your lessons, they don't want to learn English, they want to have some break, to have some rest, and so on. Our children should gain knowledge and, of course, overall skills. There are several questions we should ask before making an ESL lesson creative. Give these questions some thought before you outline your ESL lesson plans. Knowing the answers will save your time and, of course, aggravation down the road. So let's come to these questions and you'll see if you are familiar with them. Will you review what the school, the educational program, or the course planning or curriculum is teaching the students or requires? Or will you create new learning goals? If the target language will be new, be sure it's appropriate for the student's level. You don't need to teach your students to know everything. You don't need to teach your students to be involved fully, but you need just a partial involvement at the first stage, and then you can come to a better result. The second question arises, will you focus on speaking, on reading, writing, or listening, or just it will be some kind of a combination? Will it come to fluency or accuracy? What will you teach to your students, to be fluent or accurate? Or maybe if you work with B1 or B2 level students, like our school leavers, when they are getting ready for passing their external English evaluation, you need to be sure that they've got some even proficiency in the language, in the target language, in the target vocabulary, in grammar, and in all the aspects. And the last question, but it's rather important too, will you teach alone or will you have some help? The simplest games, for example, can be difficult to teach without translation unless you are very prepared, or there can be students with special needs in class. Some kind of inclusive, yes, inclusive students, no more than 2 of them, but they can be in the classroom, and you need to understand their needs. You need to help them. You need to get them involved in the learning as well. You need them to understand what you are doing and why you do this or that. Whether you are teaching in person or remotely, there are tons of amazing places to find ESL audio, video resources, as well as ready-made ESL worksheets online. As we'll see later, audio and visual materials and actually practice worksheets, they are essential tools for ESL lesson planning, but sometimes we've got lots of mistakes when we use them, when we don't understand the meaning of them. Well, in my teaching practice, I always use several resources. I'd like to outline them right now. So the first one is just like a slogan, like a logo: teach your best class every class, and it's called ESL Library. You can use it. You can just sign up. You can learn more about it. You can find it online. ESL Library, it's just an incredibly accessible resource with a great rounded and extensive catalog of activities ranging from ready-made activities, worksheets, and as well you can create some of your worksheets there as well. In my teaching, I always use FluentU. It's a website, it's a platform as well, innovation in learning, resources and tools for ESL teachers, students, and language schools. I don't use this resource at our secondary school, but I always use it in my private practice. This resource takes authentic videos. To be honest, I like when we can have a chance to see, to watch, to listen to some natives. They can be music videos, movie trailers, news, inspiring talks, and they are really personalized. It really matters in the classroom because when your children, when your students, school children or students or adults, when they see someone's experience, they want to rely on it. They want to believe in it, and they start they become more motivated. So each video features native English speakers, and your students gain first-hand experience, listen to authentic English conversations. Well, at once I've got such a question like, I know that most of our Ukrainian schools, they work with books prepared by Ukrainian authors, but still there is a range of books which are prepared by Oxford Press Publishing or maybe Cambridge Press Publishing, Macmillan, and so on. Using those resources, you can of course get more because there are more native speaking materials the materials which include native speaking, or we can listen to such video podcasts, audio, video materials, and so on. Well, and one more resource I will mention, it's Lingua House. This resource provides a wide range of ESL worksheets. They are ready to be used in class. That resource actually is almost the same as live worksheets, but there is some difference. The worksheets are divided into general, business, elementary, exam preparations, meaning you can utilize these resources for a specific class, just for your high school, or maybe for your adults, for those who are getting ready to pass some exams. You can also find worksheets which are real masterpieces. Well, before plan a lesson, I always decide on my plan objectives. This is a daunting part. It's crucial that you know it from the start. Step one is foundation of everything that follows in your class. Your focus could be, it could be a song, it could be a movie. Of course, be sure that your school permits this, because it can be disturbing. It can disturb neighboring classrooms. To be honest, I always use songs and movies in my classroom because they give much fun. They bring much fun into the classroom. But audio must be played loudly. Some teachers don't like it when audio is very, very loud, but you should understand, you should remember that what we listen to is in a different language, and the sound should be of a good quality. If it's a movie, it should be shot well. It should be of a good quality. It shouldn't be really long. Then you should focus on a specific grammatic point if you teach grammar. It's just a traditional approach to teach grammar, to have some model, to rely on the model, to practice it in class within several drills or repetitions. And you need to understand that, in my opinion, there shouldn't be too much grammar in the classroom. Why so? I'll explain a little bit later. Also, a general exercise such as understanding the material, it can be a vocabulary group, it can be some just semantic group of vocabulary, it can be target vocabulary or something like that. It's just a general exercise. 1, not 2, not 5, not 6 exercises should be during your class, because it's rather difficult to mix up, and we shouldn't mix up. You might teach cooking, you might teach colors, medical terminology, or maybe even animals, and you should focus on this topic. You shouldn't like skip this and come to the next point. No, it's not possible. You shouldn't do so. Every lesson plan should include different kinds or types of work. You should include individual work. It's a must. To keep things organized, my outlines include the estimated time spent on each section. For example, a movie outline. A movie outline can be like for teenagers. I'll talk about teenagers. Just 1 minute, you're waiting for your students to arrive for the class. Then you try to calm them down. I think you know, they never arrive on time, and at the same time they are very loud, they're very noisy, they've got lots of questions, they want to share their information with you, they want to tell you something, to ask you something, but not to start a lesson. So plan 1 minute for just organizational moments for your class. Welcoming notes, welcoming and quick reviewing the previous week, or maybe the previous topics material. Spend at least 3 minutes for this point. Then pass out movie worksheets. for a minute. You need just a minute to pass them out. You need to tell your students while passing the material out about the topic of today's lesson and start coming to the point. Play preview of the movie. With the preview of the movie, you can get your students involved at once without any hesitation. 2 minutes preview, no longer, please. Introduce vocabulary needed to understand movie scene. 5-7 minutes for introduction of the vocabulary. Then you can have some individual practice of the vocabulary on student worksheets, giving answers to worksheets, some kind of a discussion. There can be some listening materials, listening exercises with the movie. They can include playing the video scene several times. You can just start repeating the scenes, then going over the answers, letting the students watch the scenes a third time, and sometimes even a fourth and fifth and sixth time. It doesn't matter how many times you watch that movie. Even spend at least 15 up to 20 minutes for this, because more you watch, more you understand. Not you, of course, as a teacher, your students, they will understand it better. Free watching of the movie. Sometimes I let my class to watch just the movie freely, so they can watch the movie in the full size, or they can watch the movie at home before the class. It makes the class even easier, because when they come to, they know what who are the characters, they know what are the main moments in that movie, so it's easier to work with that. And of course, wrap up the class by asking minutes. It's important to balance your classroom organization with the time for the unexpected. You know that we should be ready for an anticipated questions. They can come just like through all your timing, and they can come without any notice. Yeah, your students may ask you something interesting. You can get involved. You can start answering these questions, and you forget about the time. Never, please, never do this, because it makes your lesson plan fail. It'll make your lesson plan fail. Well, I always choose ESL activities to accomplish my lesson plan objectives. Variety is the spice for a creative ESL classroom. Everyone, learns differently. You need activities for visual, you need activities for audio learners, as well as those who prefer doing something. That's why you must have some variety of activities. What do I use in my classrooms? If we speak about some primary classes I work with, I always use interesting greetings. The same greeting I use several times, like during 1 week or during 2 weeks. Now we are having, most of us are having distant learning. We've got online lessons. I never shoot my video lessons. I always try to be on the track with my students. I always try to be online with them. We've got 10 or 15 or sometimes 20 minutes lessons where we can discuss something, where we can talk about something. And of course, I always ask my students about their mood, about their emotions. So this component of a creativity, like emotional state of a child, it's very important. Even sometimes when my students or my young learners, when they tell me that they are hungry, I try to encourage them. I try to tell them, please don't worry. As I've already mentioned, I like noise in my classroom. My classes are always full of noise, and I'm never against that, because when your children are like this, they work. You can make them get concentrated, but it's not always important, believe me. Well, at my classes, I always use a helping hand. These helping hands are always used by me, and there are two emoticons. The first one is like a smile. It's a smiling emotion with a pink hand, and another one is a green one with a sad face. If student has got a question, he can raise this one if he's excited, if he's happy, if he or she has done his exercise, if he's ready. And this one, if here it helps other students or other children to pay attention, because they hear some sound, they start looking at each other, what's happening, whose hand is raised, and we stop our lesson for a moment, just for a while. Of course, I ask them not to use those hands without any need. Classroom, you imagine a simple, just an ordinary classroom where there are several desks, there is a teacher's table, there is a blackboard or a whiteboard. Some classes have got special whiteboards with equipment, with a projector, but not always. There are some classes where there are no projectors and you rely on yourself without any technical help. But still, I always use gaming. My classes at primary school and even at the 5th and 6th class students, for 5th and 6th class students, are full of gaming. I love gaming. I love storytelling. It's very creative. It develops your imagination. It develops your creativity. And I love using puppets. I'll just show you quickly. So there are puppets which are handy. Believe me, sometimes when I come to the older students, like class 8 or class 9, they are always having fun if I leave some puppets on the desk. They always take them, they always play with them, and sometimes I let them do this because it's a part of a lesson. If they liked this, why not? I always say, why not? You can use it. We make dialogues. We have got group work discussions using puppets. So puppets are our friends. School children still believe in a fairy tale. They still believe in games. Games which are used correctly let students test what they've learned. And that's a test in a very relaxed, exciting way. The key is to make sure everyone participates. Without proper management for this or that game, weaker or lazier students, sometimes it's difficult to organize a game. But in a 45-minute class, a game shouldn't be longer than 12 minutes. I always have got this time management because it can be a nightmare if you play the whole lesson. During the whole lesson, it's not really good. Children will have fun, that's for sure. Your lesson will be really creative because you've played all the time. Children love playing, they enjoy it, they adore it, but they will not get anything. They will not get anything out of the topic, out of the material. And we should always watch our motivations. There is a big difference between playing and some animal game, for example, or teach relax, for example, Hangman. I like this game. I always play it during my classes. It's a silent game. Students get concentrated. They try to think up some words, they try to think up some stories, or they try to guess what's hidden on the board. Consider the pros and cons of individual and group ESL work. It's rather important for effective creative ESL teaching because no lesson is complete without individual work. Everyone needs time to practice material on their own. These activities also help shy students. I'm sure that you've got rather shy students in your timid or shy students or silent learners, as we call them, in your classrooms. They can work quietly without any pressure of a spotlight. Group work, on the other hand, is used to, and you should try to combine individual work with a group work, because students can practice a dialogue with each other. They can learn from stronger partners. Team activities are always fun. At the same time, they give everyone a chance to relax a little bit. You know, team, when they cope with when they cope with some task, they start talking about something. They start discussing something. They are telling each other their secrets. They are joking, making jokes, and that's good. It means that your students are involved in the process. If you use puppet shows or just some puppets during such activities or during group work, it adds much more fun, because firstly, they talk to each other, they're making up dialogues. Secondly, they try to add and involve these puppets into the show, into the group work. But the drawback of a group work, though, is that more advanced students, they always tend to dominate the action. So you should find the right mix, and the right mix will be really essential. I love it. I do it always, repeating ESL activities. We can repeat activities we had last week. How often it depends on how popular the activity is. I'm sure that your students love playing or asking. They're always asking you. It's rather annoying when they're asking, let's play the game we played last time. I always say no. I never let my students to change my plan objectives. And it happened actually yesterday, and it happened also today when my students asked me to play a Pictionary game with them. We did it. It was like oh yeah, okay. Now we'll come to the slide and I'll show you what I mean by the word Pictionary. So Pictionary, it's a game which I use in my classrooms, and it's about some pictures. You can stick them on the board, or you can stick them, you can give flashcards to your students. They see just pictures of some vocabulary words which are new, or maybe they've already learned this material. It can be your target vocabulary, or it can be your target language. It doesn't matter, but pictures should be visible. Your students should understand what is shown in each picture. Now on the screen, you can see in my presentation, you can see several pictures, and I want to mention that some of them are not clear. Let's take into account, for example, the first picture, where you can see two horses. There is some beach, and believe me, for your students, even if they switch on their imagination, it will be rather difficult to understand whether you want to tell, to say the phrase like to speak about riding a horseback riding, or you want to speak about or talk about beach, having rest at the beach, and so on. The same happens with the second picture, where you can see some river or a lake, and there are two women. It will be difficult for your students to understand what they are doing. The simplest answer is that, oh yes, they are swimming. But our imagination is a little bit different from those of our students. The third picture as well, we can see two men, and we can't understand whether they lost their track, or maybe they are just hiking, or maybe they are having some picnic in the forest or in the mountains. It's difficult to understand. And as you can see, the last picture shows the most appropriate answer which students can give you, and it can be like, oh yeah, I can see tent. There are 3 tents. I can see a fireplace, fire. There is some fire, so it means that they are camping. Yes, that's okay. It's much easier to work with flashcards which show just an action, like football, fishing, And the next one is rather difficult because swimming or sailing or yachting, what it means, or boating, a lot of synonyms. You can practice synonyms with this picture. Then tennis, reading, cycling, listening to music, and of course, laying in the sun or having some rest, just laying down. The one that is difficult picture, that picture is rather difficult. So the same about picture, the same about picture quests or Pictionary as a game. You can see it's like question by question from the start up to the finish. There is no finish, but still you can see a picture. You let your students see that picture with the help of the projector or with the help of a flashcard, with the help of your board. You can just stick it on the board, and there are questions. It's for those, the questions are for those whose language level is not so high. It will be easier for them to understand what you mean and what you want out of them when you ask this or that question. How many pupils are there? Where are they? What is Ali doing? You ask them to find the instruction, the direction. So who's Ali? Where is Ali? What is he doing? What time is it? Where is Lena? What is Paul drawing? Where is the flag from? How many pupils wear glasses? So you can see how many topics are revised and actually drilled with the help of such an exercise, vocabulary exercise. So the topic of descriptions, objects, school supplies, activities, even maybe furniture, what else? Countries, nationalities, a lot of topics, and they are speaking topics. You can ask your students to speak more about this or that object. For example, where is the flag from? The flag, you can see a flag which is an American flag. So the country is the USA, the United States of America. You can ask your students to tell you the nationality of people who live in the US. You can ask your students about different places of interest there, and at the same time you're revising grammar, you're revising vocabulary. You make your students speak, and they also at the same time they listen to you when you ask them these or those questions. It helps you to get your students fully involved, because believe me, when you talk to them, when you ask them something, they want to just to hear you, to listen to you, and that's rather important in my opinion. Well, sometimes to paraphrase, you need to explain, you need to adapt, but visible picture is like a helping hand for you. You can hand on to your ESL materials for future classes. Believe me, but I reuse the same materials several times, and it helps me to have lots of materials which are varied. I stock on them, I store them in different folders on my computer or just in folders for the next classes. And it helps, especially if you work at the same school or with the same age groups from year to year. And it's rather essential for every teacher. I wouldn't say that it develops your creativity, but it helps you to sync up. Every time you look at this or that picture once again, you see and you notice something new in it. And I always ask my students to learn how to analyze, how to understand, how to adapt, how to mix. And the same about, for example, this American flag. I always them, what other flags could we see in that picture? So I'll come to the previous slide, and you can see the topic music, lesson 1, who says what, click and drag. There are phrases, and as well there are pictures. In those pictures, you ask your students to develop their imagination. First of all, I ask them in their native language to help me to understand what's happening in those comics. They give lots of variants. They like to speak, especially if they are asked to do that in Russian or in Ukrainian. Many of my students, they speak Russian, so I always say in Russian, but lots of those who speak Ukrainian as well. Then, when we've gathered their ideas, we come to some listening. We do pre-listening, we listen to the story, we try to understand the story, we mix up some phrases, some collocations. I always want and ask them to extend the phrases. Which other phrases can we use? And so on. Sometimes my lesson is finished, but there is still time on the clock. Extra time on the clock means that your class was too advanced for the lesson, or maybe that you overestimated the time you needed for this or that class. So what should you have? Okay, 1 minute more and we'll finish. What should you have for your class just in your sleeve? Please have several games. Please have several games in your class, in your sleeve, I mean, yes. Please have several materials, several worksheets. And the last point, how to develop creativity. In this very slide, you can see like it's a child's hand and it's a handicraft. We're doing crafts with colors. It's the first grade. Students like such activities, and they always like gluing, sticking, and so on. Well, let's come to the next slide. Just a second. Something is about to be slow, a little bit slow. Okay. Our time is coming to be up. So, останнє, про що хотів сказати, що я використовую особисто на своїх уроках, то я використовую мовне портфоліо. Для дошкільнят є у нас таке прекрасне моє перше мовне портфоліо під авторством Інни Анатоліївни Кулікової і моїм співавторством з нею. Для початкової школи, for primary school, на жаль, дуже є багато рекомендацій до мовного європейського портфоліо, але немає ідеальних таких портфоліо. І в своїй практиці я завжди використовую ці портфоліо, тому що вони додають, щонайбільше, мабуть, мені здається, креативності. Портфоліо у мене завжди виглядає в режимі worksheets, але це не інтернетні воркшіти, це worksheets, які я намагаюся зробити самостійно. Так, це займає багато часу, але все одно. Наостанок, на чому б хотілося наголосити? Чарівної пігулки насправді немає. 100% дієвого методу у викладанні та навчанні іноземної мови, англійської мови в нашому випадку насправді не існує. Так? Ви знаєте, мабуть, кожен з вас, як вчитель, знає про теорію Малькольма Глаудела. Якщо не знаєте, будь ласка, знайдіть в інтернеті, перечитайте цю теорію, який казав, що 10 тисяч годин – непорожній звук. Ви, напевно, знаєте, що для досягнення будь-якого рівня володіння новою мовою будуть потрібні місяці, а то й роки наполегливої праці. Особливо для вчителя, який хоче бути креативним, який хоче розвиватися, це найголовніше. Ніколи не кажіть собі, що ви не креативні, ви не вмієте креативити, ви не вмієте знаходити цікаві, ефективні підходи до викладання, до проведення того чи іншого уроку. Ми маємо пам'ятати і розуміти, світ ділиться за темами і формами. Світ розвивається, ми не стоїмо на місці. Розвивайте, навчайте за допомогою малюнків, за допомогою творчих активностей, експериментуйте з гаджетами, експериментуйте з діджиталізацією, з сервісами, додатками. Дайте волю, повну волю на повну інтуїції. Інтуїтивно відноситеся до того матеріалу, який ви приносите до класу. Але самоорганізуйтеся. Найголовніше – самоорганізуватися. Тоді вчителювання, тоді вчителем англійської мови буде стати і бути легше. Дякую за увагу.
Дуже дякую вам, Ігорю. Дуже була цікава презентація і ваш виступ в цілому. Я сподіваюся, всім сподобався. Добре, на цьому ми будемо закінчувати наш вебінар. Ми зараз в загальний чат надішлемо наші контакти. І посилання на сертифікат вам прийде на пошту, якщо ви захочете його придбати. Добре, тоді підписуйтесь на наші соцмережі, слідкуйте за оновленнями, вони в нас постійні, виходять нові вебінари, івенти, поповнюємо нашу скарбничку курсів підвищення кваліфікації, тому не забувайте слідкувати. Добре, на цьому прощаюсь. Всім гарного вечора. До побачення.
До побачення. Дякуємо.
Дякуємо вам.